Mr. Kidd, we had a number of women and two different groups in earlier on, and they raised a lot of issues in relation to medical card access, accountability issues, supports in terms of attending the clinics in Cork and Dublin, aftercare and support issues, the use of the translabial scanners, the extent in which they are available, and also the issues around access for treatment abroad, and many other issues as well. So it strikes me that there is a poor lack of engagement between those women and those campaign groups or advocate groups in the HSE. So I don't know if there is a point of contact or somebody in the HSE who engages with these women, but it strikes me it's quite poor. And if we have women coming before this committee who are survivors telling us that their experience is not a good one, that's a problem for the HSE. So I would suggest the first thing the HSE needs to do, notwithstanding your opening statement in relation to the implementation of the CMO's report and supports and services that you say are available, women obviously have a different view, and they have their view and they need to be listened to. So I would suggest that the HSE needs to examine that in the first instance. But I want to put questions in relation to the different treatment options and the clinical side of it. So maybe Dr. Murphy, if I just come to you. So I understand, of course I get it, that a clinician has to make a clinical judgment as to what treatment they feel is best. So whether that's a partial or a full removal, obviously a surgeon or a specialist will have to decide from their perspective what's best, what's safe and so on. But then the women obviously have a choice and they have their own view. And it seems to me that either it's the case that there is a bias within the system towards partial removal, on the one hand, which might be based on the fact that clinicians see it as the best option, or that there's a lack of skills and expertise in actually performing full removals in this state. So which is it? Is there a lack of expertise in that area in terms of being able to perform full removals, and is that one of the reasons why there seems to be, I won't say a push, but certainly a view from clinicians that a partial removal is best?
So when describing options for complications of procedures, you have to give all the options, including conservative, interventional, etc. So the types of procedure that can be done after a complication would be covering of the mesh, division of the mesh, partial excision, full excision, complete removal. So they're all options if you read any of the papers. With regard to pain, there's good evidence saying if there's no mesh abnormality found, as in the mesh isn't extruding, it's not in the wrong place, then in fact removal of the mesh can even have persistent of pain in up to 42% of people. So it can depend on the presenting complaint and what what's the best option. So I wouldn't say it's the fact that the expertise isn't there, but it's along the lines of that we know there's anywhere between 15 and 20% of people can have further complications after removal of mesh. And obviously there's a duty of care. There's a duty of care in the first instance when one is doing a primary procedure in medicine to offer all the options and to counsel appropriately. There's also a duty of care to not make a situation worse or to offer... I
get that. Just my time is really tight, and I'm really sorry because I have a minute and a half left. I just want to come back on that point, because if a woman believes that a full removal is best for them, then it seems one of the few options, or maybe the only option they have, is to travel abroad and get it. And the HSE is saying, well, we fully support that and we'll support them through the reimbursement scheme or the treatment abroad scheme. But here's what one of the women said today in their opening statement, Mr. Kidd, and I'll address this to you as well, Ms. Murphy, that the HSE healthcare patients treatment abroad scheme is illusory. It says the system is stacked against them. It says that, in their view, patients who reject the HSE surgical preferences will only receive lip service when they ask the HSE consultants to provide the necessary documentation to support their application for the treatment abroad scheme. And they say that it's a like it or lump it, partial removal or nothing approach. And I'll just read the last paragraph of it, which I think is important. It says the HSE's official position that there is not just one but many surgeons who perform this operation locally means that the treatment abroad scheme pathway is a fool's errand. The gateway door never really opened. The HSE conducts an automated appeal. Rejection follows. The door is bolted from the inside. So it doesn't suggest to me that that is an option. for many women, and they feel that it's very restrictive and they don't get supported if they want to get treatment abroad.
If I can just comment on, the fact that it's not available, it certainly is available, and there are people with the skills to do total mesh removal here. Now, with regard to the access to the treatment abroad scheme, I may ask Catherine to describe access to the treatment abroad scheme and experience so far.
Hi, Deputy Cullinane. So the treatment abroad scheme is governed by legislation, rules and criteria that are set down by Europe. Under the criteria, the patient needs a referral letter and a fully completed application form completed in conjunction with the referring consultant. We recognised that women were experiencing difficulty, and we developed a protocol so that they would get automatic approval. So what that protocol allows for is that in a situation where a case is complex and outside the competencies of the specialist service in Dublin or Cork, that the patient is referred either from Dublin to Cork or from Cork to Dublin for a second opinion in the first instance. And once the patient has those two examinations and they have the referral, then they're automatically approved by the treatment abroad scheme.
Well, that's not the women's experience, but I think we'll have to come back on that issue, because it's not what we've been told by two different sets of groups that represent hundreds of women. It's not their experience of that scheme. It clearly isn't working for many of them, and it seems that if a consultant doesn't sign off on it, then the person can't avail of it. And while the HSE says it's available, what they're telling us is, in reality, it isn't. It's an illusion, because there's problems with sign-offs.
You're absolutely right. If the consultant doesn't sign off on it, they need that referral in order to get through. Yes.
And just on the issue of if a person needs more than one operation, if they need a follow-up in relation to reconstruction, and which was one of the points that was made this morning. They were saying that that wasn't covered under the scheme.
Okay, that's again not completely accurate. And each application is an individual application. So if you apply for surgery, then it's either approved or declined, one or the other. So you can apply for further surgery if that's deemed necessary. But if you were applying for follow-up care, to have your care transferred to another jurisdiction, that wouldn't happen. You'd have to have very good reason why follow-up care could not be provided in Ireland. I mean, if the follow-up care being surgery couldn't be provided in Ireland, yes, of course, you would be approved, but you must have a new application. In the initial application, you could specify two surgeries, 3 surgeries, whatever, but that would require to be included in the first application. We can only approve what's applied for. We can't approve what we don't know. So if there's something that is required later on that wasn't known at the first application, you just reapply.
And would it not be the case that once there's removal, then this necessitates construction after that? Well, again, depending
So
on the
normally
case.
when a patient goes abroad for surgery, regardless of whether it's paediatric heart transplant or mesh removal or whatever the surgery is, at discharge, the treating consultant abroad gives an up-to-date medical report and a care plan to the referring consultant in Ireland, and the referring consultant in Ireland implements the care plan.
Okay, great. Roshan?